This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're looking at a really special kind of Ultrabook. This is the HP NV14 Spectre. Don't know why they have to stick the number 14 in there. Spectre sounds cool enough, but this is a 3-surface glass Ultrabook. 14-inch Ultrabook, so a little bit bigger than the others, a little bit heavier because it has all the glass, but really stunning, beautiful looking machine. We're going to take a look at it now. So this is the HP NV14 Spectre. Unlike other NVs that are really performance-oriented machines, this one goes for being absolutely gorgeous and thin and light, well, relatively speaking. And you can see here it has a glass lid. This is Gorilla Glass, so it is break resistant, but it's still glass, folks. So this is something that you're going to have to handle a little carefully. And you can see it makes a perfect companion for our black iPhone 4 here. Similar design concept right there. Now inside we also have glass. We're going to take a look at that in a minute, but first we're going to take a look at the ports. This is your little lift-up lid area to open it up, and you can see it's quite thin, nice and silver. And ours has a little bit of warp, which is disappointing. You can see that that side wants to stay open a little bit. HP and their quality control, a little bit iffy here, even though this is a $1,400 machine. If we take a look at the side here, we have more ports than you usually find on an Ultrabook. And again, this is a 14-inch design. Ultrabooks are usually 13-inch notebooks. HP did a very good job of keeping the footprint down, though. So it's really not much bigger. It's thicker than your average Ultrabook because those are so incredibly thin, but you do have room for more ports. SD card slot right here. You've got your combo mic headphone 3.5mm jack. 2 USB ports, one of them is 3.0. So your Ethernet jack has to actually drop down a little bit. There's a little piece of plastic there. Comes down to accommodate the Ethernet jack because it's actually thicker than the side of the notebook. Full-size HDMI port and a mini display port, so you can drive 2 external monitors with this guy at once. Very nice for an Ultrabook. Here we've got the power plug. This is your Beats audio button that brings up Beats audio settings, and the rotary wheel that we saw on the new NV15 as well. So you've got a rotary analog controller for your volume there, and you've got a mute button right there. Along the back, 2 hinges, reasonably well designed, and it says Hewlett-Packard there in pretty letters. So, other than the fact that there's that little bit of warp there, otherwise very good fit and finish on the machine, very high-end, classy looking. And again, this is a machine that really caters towards looks rather than performance. If we take a look at the bottom, it's designed a lot again like the NV15. So the latches here to release this cover, and what you see inside is the battery. It's not a user-replaceable battery in terms of something that has a simple socket connection. You actually have to undo a lot of screws, so HP doesn't call this everyday user-replaceable. We've got some air vents over here, and there's no obvious way to take off this secondary panel up here to access, say, the RAM and all that kind of thing. Now, HP says it has a DIMM slot. We hope that's true, so in theory it could be upgradable maybe to 8 gigs of RAM. It comes with 4 gigs like all Ultrabooks out of the box, and it has an SSD drive. And here we've taken off that cover so you can see this is the battery here. This giant panel is the 4-cell battery, and these are 2 stereo speakers right here for your Beats audio. So no 5.1 like you get in the bigger NVs, but still has Beats audio, still incredibly loud, and we'll let you listen to that soon. So how does this compare to the HP Folio 13, which is HP's more traditional Ultrabook? You see the footprint is pretty much identical, so that's pretty neat. You're moving up to 14 inches in terms of display size without really adding on anything in terms of your footprint. And you can see when it comes to thickness, the Folio 13 is thinner, but it's not really by just anything but a hair. Now, the Folio 13 is not one of the thinnest Ultrabooks. In fact, it's one of the thicker ones, but still, that's pretty cool. The one place you are giving up that Ultrabook portability is in weight. Glass is heavy, right? So this guy weighs a pound more than 13-inch Ultrabooks. It weighs 4 pounds versus the 3-pound average for 13-inch Ultrabooks. Now we have the Folio 13 open on the left and the NV Spectre on the right. Now the NV Spectre has a higher resolution 1600 by 900 display. That's up from the usual 1366 by 768 that we see on 13-inch Ultrabooks. And since you do have a bit bigger display, that resolution is more usable without having teeny tiny type. So you can see the overall look difference here. This is really nice looking, and it's kind of definitely MacBook Pro derivative look, but very clean, very nice. And this is your more, well, everyday kind of HP look on the inside, kind of from the Pavilion line. So that's the difference on the look inside. Now, neither of these displays is sadly very bright. the folio is pretty darn dim, and even though this has a lovely IPS or radiance display as HP calls it, this is maximum brightness right now, and we're talking not super duper bright, but that's what HP does to squeeze out the supposed 9¼ hours of battery life, just like the Folio 13 is supposed to have. And now, just for size comparison's sake, we have the NV15 here, which is 15.6-inch display, just regular old Nero black, as they call it, matte black painted finish. And we've got the NV14 Spectre right here, so you can see definite size difference. So the NV15 manages to be pretty darn slim for a 15-inch powerhouse notebook. It is, of course, thicker by a good bit. And now we've got the NV Spectre 14 there on the left and the NV15 on the right. Obvious big size difference there again, but you can see the shared design aesthetic. Both of them are kind of MacBook Pro-like, but you've got glass here on the trackpad area. This is, or wrist area rather, this is Gorilla Glass again. You can see the difference in the screen brightness too. The NV15 gets a lot brighter because they're not trying to squeeze maximum portable battery life out of that guy. While the NV15 has a little inset drop keyboard with the red line, this guy is flush and flat. Kind of remind me a little bit actually of the Sony Vaio Z kind of design. But there they are side by side to give you the idea. They both have backlit keyboards, obviously. Now when you buy the NV14 Spectre, you're going to get the usual notebook-looking outer box, and there's going to be an inner box for a little bit prettier presentation. Not as frou-frou as the ZenBook or the Dell XPS 13, but still pretty nice. And you'll find that in that inner box, your NV ships inside this included neoprene cover. Now, neoprene covers are not that expensive, but it's a nice touch, and it also obviously protects the glass during shipping. So you get this in the box. And you get a kind of unusual charger. Thin, curvy-looking thing. And this actually, instead of doing just a plug-in, it unscrews. And it's a lot, again, like the ZenBook charger, and there's a third-party charger we've seen at Fry's that's a lot like this too. You get a USB charging port here so you can charge your smartphone off of this at the same time. Pretty portable, pretty nice. Otherwise, just your average amount of cord here and a 3-prong adapter for power. So let's talk a little bit more about what the NV14 Spectre is. This is your upscale Ultrabook, basically, and it gives you a little bit more breathing room in terms of your keyboard space, your work area, again, the ports, that kind of thing, and you get all the premium surfaces. You get 3 surfaces of Gorilla Glass. You've got it here, a little raised edge here of Gorilla Glass. The display is also edge-to-edge Gorilla Glass, looks pretty cool, and obviously the lid is Gorilla Glass. Happily, the underside is not, because who'd want a breakable, slippery surface underneath? So good going, HP. They didn't try to do anything fancy there. You've got nice painted metal and plastic surfaces underneath. Machine sells for $13.99. For that you get a Core i5 ULV CPU. That's a 2nd generation Sandy Bridge running at 1.6 gigahertz. That's the same CPU you'll find in all of the Ultrabooks that sell for around $1,000. So again, you're paying the price premium for the materials, for the fancy glass, that kind of thing. You get a 128 gig SSD. That looks like a SATA 2 from what I can tell, and the speeds are good, but not super duper superb like the SATA 3 that we saw in the Samsung PM830 used in the Dell XPS 13 Ultrabook we recently reviewed. 4 gigs of RAM, as I mentioned. HP refers to it as a DIMM, but we haven't been able to figure out how you tear this bad boy open to actually access it to see if it's a regular DIMM slot. Most Ultrabooks have the memory soldered on the motherboard, permanently, because the motherboards are, well, so darn teeny on these things. They don't have a lot of room for upgradability. If you want to spend more money, you can get a Core i7 1.8 gigahertz. Again, that is a ULV CPU. That means ultra low voltage. So you get longer battery life, quieter, cooler running times, but it's not as fast as the full Core i5 and i7 CPUs used in big machines. Machine has Intel Wi-Fi, dual band, it's advanced N6320, so that's good, that's dual band, that's compatible with WiDi. With the HP Folio 13, there was a little conundrum going on because the quick ship model actually does not have WiDi, even though HP's website seems to indicate that it does, because it has Broadcom wireless instead. So this guy, you get all Intel, good Wi-Fi inside, dual band, compatible with WiDi. Also has integrated Bluetooth 3.0 high-speed as part of that Intel Advanced N package. For graphics, you've got the same old Intel Integrated Graphics HD 3000, very capable for playing video up to 1080p, which is higher than the screen's resolution, but it does have HDMI out if you want to make use of that. there is no dedicated graphics option. So let me again stress that while NVs have been gaming and multimedia performance powerhouse machines, this guy is not. This basically is an Ultrabook in classy clothing. So a little confusing there. I know some of you are going to look at the NV line and think that they're all really heavy-duty 3D gamers. This guy, not so much for that. This guy's about portability. It's 4 pounds, it's thin and light, and that's what it is. We have a nice backlit keyboard here, good, and much less flex than we noticed on the NV15, just about none. Very nice keyboard to type on. Backlight is adjustable here. There's a button for on and off. And it goes off in a gradual, kind of cool manner. It doesn't do the staircasing effect like the NV15, but still looks neat. And there's a little red IR light that you'll occasionally see popping up here instead of the dual red LED IR lights that we have on the NV15, and that's to sense if you're there. So it knows if you've been away for a while, it's going to turn off that keyboard backlight. Save a little power. All the multimedia control keys for your brightness, the keyboard backlighting, multimedia playback and stuff. You don't have to hit the FN key first to activate those. And we've got the wireless on-off button here, which always has a little light on, turns amber if you turn wireless off, just a little indicator to help you figure that out in case you're wondering where'd your wireless go. Well, you probably accidentally hit the wireless key there. Trackpad is, well, typical NV trackpad. It's a buttonless kind of thing, but it has a really nice feel to it. It's smooth, yet there's a little bit of resistance, and I'm liking it pretty well. HP's finally getting somewhere with their Synaptic touchpads, and this one's been enjoyable so far. Again, your volume controls and your Beats audio controls are off on the side, and there's a rotary analog controller, which makes it a lot easier. Say you're inside of a video playback or game, lightweight game, not super heavy-duty 3D game, and you've got quick access thanks to that rotary controller. Liking that quite a bit. Sound on this with the Beats audio is good. It's incredibly loud for a 14-inch ultrabookish kind of machine. A little heavy and muddy on the bass, which is something that you know is a little typical of Beats audio, but the NV15 has really clear 6-speaker audio, and really it didn't seem as bass heavy as this guy does. But hey, for an Ultrabook, really pretty awesome sound. You can always use the EQ and tone down that bass a little bit if it bothers you. As we mentioned, this is a Radiance display, which is HP speak for IPS, and it's a very nice display, and yes, it does have cooler reds than the NV15 for those of you who didn't like the warm orangey reds on the NV15. Our only complaint again is the lack of brightness. For a machine this expensive, I would really like to see more brightness out of this otherwise lovely, sharp, colorful, contrasty, wide viewing angle display. HP really wants to tout the fact that it has 9-hour battery life, and therefore they're limiting the brightness on the panel, but gee, they should at least give you the option to crank it up if you want to and say, okay, I'm really maxing out the brightness because I can live without having that really amazing battery life. The machine runs very cool and very quiet. You don't hear the fan now because, well, it's not running at all. Very impressive, especially for those who are bothered by the kind of loud fan on the Dell XPS 13 we recently reviewed. And CPU temps, when you're doing light workload stuff, hover around 45 to 50 degrees centigrade. 100 is the maximum, and that's relatively quite cool. Even if it's working pretty hard, it still runs fairly cool. It's pretty hard to get this guy to break 60 unless you're trying to do something like play Left 4 Dead 2 on it, which it is capable of doing since Left 4 Dead 2 scales nicely down to Intel integrated graphics. Crysis 2, if you watch our Dell XPS 13 gaming video, you get the idea. These are all running on the same hardware platform. You're going to get the same performance from all of them when it comes to 3D gaming. That includes the MacBook Air. They're not really geared for something like Crysis 2. Even Mass Effect 2 is a bit of a strain, but some games that are really designed to work on integrated graphics, well, you can do that. Display resolution is 1600 by 900 again, so that's a nice step up from most Ultrabooks. Only the Asus ZenBook UX31 has that resolution, and the 14 inches gives you a little more room. You still have fairly teeny tiny icons here on the desktop, as you can see, but things are legible. HP includes some bloatware, but it's not too bad, and thankfully they keep it all at the desktop, so when you first boot it up, you don't see a whole lot of that stuff. You get the usual Norton antivirus bundle. It's a trial version. You've got Intel software for WiDi and all that kind of stuff. Adobe Reader's on board. We all usually find that useful. Windows Live stuff. You get Adobe Premiere Elements 10, and you get Photoshop Elements 10 as well. It's nice, not the old 9 version that usually gets bundled on most, so that's kind of handy if you want to do a little video editing and some image editing. Image editing, totally Intel HD 3000 graphics, good for handling that. Movie editing, yeah, you can do that, and it's pretty responsive in the editing, but the export's going to take you a while. For example, if you want to do a 10-minute 1080p video and export it as 1080p, say for YouTube, it's going to take about half an hour to do that. Ultrabooks are more than capable of handling MS Office. Again, if you want to use something like Adobe Photoshop CS5, it's going to work just fine, and YouTube too. Let's check out some 1080p video here and see how it does.
The studio that brought you Pirates of the Caribbean and Alice in Wonderland comes the motion picture event. Critics are calling the first big blockbuster of the year.
Now we're at half volume, and that's playing. Yeah, loud and plenty of bass there. So that was YouTube and Adobe Flash Playback, and now we're going to check out Netflix. And you can see the Netflix red looks red there.
We're meddlesome.
Now we'll switch over to full screen.
We're not telling people what to think. We're just trying to show them how.
She's dreaming. Right there? Off the charts. Scary monsters.
Let's amp it up. LCMA drop.
Looks great. Sounds great.
See, most of our best work is done when they're
fine for multimedia.
We can monitor and direct their subconscious, implant suggestions. It's a little startling to see at first, but the results are spectacular. Especially in this case. River Tam is our star pupil.
And yes, of course, you can do things like Office. You can see it comes with Office 2010 Starter Edition. That means if you have a product key, you can enter it and turn it into a fuller version of Office. Otherwise, you get Word and Excel right here. So it works fine for business tasks as well. HP also includes their usual webcam up here. Pretty good at low light. And it has audio, works fine for Skype. In terms of performance, it scores 9450 or so on PC Mark Vantage Benchmark. Ultrabooks tend to score very high thanks to their SSD drives, even though they're using those ULV dual-core processors, which aren't as fast as the full-core i5 used in bigger notebooks. Experientially, it feels very responsive and snappy. That's not at the top of the heap for Ultrabooks. Some of them score a bit over 10,000. The Dell XPS scores a little bit higher. So does the Asus ZenBook, but that one has a 1.7 gigahertz Core i5, so it's got a little faster clock speed, that's why. They're all within the same ballpark. It scores slightly higher than the Folio 13, not a whole lot. And again, HP is going to stretch that battery life there, so they're not going to tweak settings so much on it. This did do better on graphics, though, than the HP Folio 13 did, which is nice. We all like to have a little bit better performance in graphics if we can for our multimedia-heavy lifestyles. So just to underscore it, the NV14 Spectre is really about premium looks, quality, and the whole ooh-ah factor. And honestly, I saw one of these in a store, and the minute the sales guy put it out, everybody stopped looking at whatever they were looking at, regardless of price range, and a couple of people said, I want that instead. It's really that drop-dead gorgeous looking. As to whether you want to pay the premium, $500 or so over another Ultrabook for the looks, that's totally up to you. But yes, indeed, in person, it is gorgeous. The only caveat is the display is not so bright, but it's a very nice display, and it's fairly color accurate with good reds. It's just hard to beat the whole effect here of this kind of sculpted glass panel over here. We've seen the raised wrist rest on Sony's, but the fact that this is Gorilla Glass just makes it a whole lot more pretty and interesting looking. And then the back view, mirror though it is, you've got the light up HP logo here, you've got that glass look. Nice machine. Really nice looking machine. The only thing that still bugs me, I'm going to complain about that warp right here where it comes up on this side, but yours might not do that. I hope it doesn't. Resume times are just about instantaneous thanks to that SSD drive, even when it comes out of hibernation, because it has a little partition dedicated on the SSD just for quick hibernation resume time. So that means about 8-9 seconds or so. So you can see it's that quick. It was just ready from sleep to have me log back in. Now for $13.99 you get that Core i5 1.6 gigahertz. All of the NV14s right now, Spectre line have Intel integrated HD 3000 graphics. Get that 128 gig SSD, and you can see right here that we don't have much space out of the box. We have about 67 gigs free after the first time Office 2010 startup ran, and you've got the little recovery partition here that's 1.7 gigs free, showing of 15.3 allocated. If you make recovery DVDs, you can whack that recovery partition, reclaim a little space. You can get this with 256 gigs of solid-state storage. Interestingly, instead of giving you a 256 gig SSD, HP puts two 128 gig SSDs in. Interesting that, but anyway, so if you want to spend more money on this, you certainly can do that. You can go all the way up to almost $2,000 and get yourself the Core i7 1.8 gigahertz ULV and the 256 gig SSD. Pretty much everything else in the configuration remains the same. Those are the two big upgrades for this guy. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website to read the full review of the HP NV14 Spectre, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.